You know, it's funny, Charles. I always have in my head some dramatic musical into like dun 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 dun. You know, like some NFL Superb Owl music. Welcome to Superb Owl Sunday with Charles. How are you?
I'm great, Jason. I hope you're well too. I had in my head the music, that song "Addicted to Love." You think we need to redo the lyrics and do "Addicted to Grift," because
Yeah.
that's what these Clintons are. I mean, and their playbook is so stupid. You know, they're accustomed. I think Hillary is deeply into this playbook, but Bill has now. It just that may be why they got together, because they both love this playbook, which is the playbook has several elements, but one of them is you always, when you get involved getting money, you want to have a medley of organizations around the process of getting money so that you can never be sure, so the public can never figure out how much money you actually got and what you did with it. So around the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, there are, which is an Arkansas-based nonprofit, there are multiple fake, fictitious names. There are names that they use that were never registered, and there are multiple versions of that Arkansas corporation that file reports in multiple states and in international locations under, again, a medley of various names. Now, all of this would be sinister without the next layers of the deception, but the next layers include that Bill and Hillary were basically controlling all these entities, but never listed until much later in the evolution of this scheme as key employees, trustees, or officers. And to make it even worse, on January 19th, 2001, Bill had to surrender his law license in Arkansas, under under threat of being formally disbarred. And I've been spending a fair amount of time in recent weeks making sure that the following statement is correct, and I believe it is correct, that just because you withdrew voluntarily your license to practice law, that doesn't mean you could say you weren't disbarred. You were disbarred. The reason you withdrew is that you knew that if a pending inquiry was going to lead to your disbarment. So Bill was disbarred in Arkansas in 2001. He was disbarred before the Supreme Court in November of 2001, in each case for periods of 5 years. And I'm reading, and I don't know if it's true yet, but I'm hearing that Bill may have obtained a license to practice law in New York and voluntarily, under threat of suspension, withdrew that in January of 2002. Why is that significant? When a lawyer is disbarred, that means he or she cannot practice law anywhere. Can't pretend you're practicing law. You can't be signing documents binding your foundation in international memoranda of understanding where foreign governments part with hundreds of millions of dollars over time during a period when you're disbarred. You know, and you know, American law is very clear on that, but in jurisdictions, you know, every foreign jurisdiction has a slightly different view on how you do it, but some of them are incredibly strict on this. So what Bill confessed to doing in My Lies, in My Life, in the paperback edition in 2005, for which with the hardcover he was paid an estimated $14 million. All, this is in 2004 and 5, all of the activities he claims that he carried out in, quote, his foundation, he didn't carry out. He couldn't have carried out. And the fact that he makes these claims in his book compounds the reporting failures of the actual entity in Arkansas, in American states, and around the world. So this is one unbelievable mess. And there's one little refinement that I got into that even our friend Stuart Dean, the lawyer who did some work years ago, excellent work, didn't concentrate upon. In Arkansas, there is a statutory requirement, meaning you have to comply with the law. You really have to do this to have a secretary. And a secretary is under Arkansas law and other state law. And again, I'm not practicing law. I'm just reciting what I read. And I believe I understand what I read. A secretary has a very important function, has several important functions. It's the secretary who keeps the board minutes. It's the secretary who authenticates that a nonprofit corporation actually exists and is entitled to do what an officer of the trustees want to do in a legal agreement. Well, there was no secretary listed for the Clinton Foundation from 2004 through 2021. That's a pretty long time to have no secretary. So why I bring all this up is there's an article that was just posted. I get various feeds concerning the Clinton Foundation on my Gmail. And there was an article posted in the New York Times by a reporter who's a veteran and active guy who has covered, he covers politics, and he's been on teams that have either been nominated or won Pulitzer Prizes. He's covered alleged problems at the NRA, which is, I think, a very sinister organization, cloaking itself in a good cause, good theoretical cause, but definitely stands accused of all kinds of charitable and other legal infractions. But he has a piece out where he says that the DOJ release contains information that gives Ghislaine Maxwell credit, in quotes, for creating the Clinton Global Initiative in 2005. It actually began operations by November of 2004, right before the center opened on November 18th. They took out, I think on the 15th, they took out the domain name of Clinton Global Initiative, I think .com and .org. I may have that wrong about two, but I think that definitely they took one out in 2004. And there was an announcement early in January. I think he went to Davos and announced in Davos the first Clinton Global Initiative would be held in 2005. Well, in 2005, Bill was disbarred in Arkansas and before the Supreme Court for sure. He was not an officer of any part of the Clinton Foundation. There was no secretary. So no one could have authorized the creation of a CGI in New York. There are no reports concerning the activities of the Clinton Foundation or any suspect name or other name of the Clinton operation from 1998 through 2005 in the New York Charity Bureau site. And so I sent a bunch of this information by email immediately to this reporter, and we'll see whether the reporter is going to act in good faith and follow up. I don't hold high hopes that he will, but you look at this, but what I did learn, which is interesting in my research, is that the Attorney General. There you go. That's the story. And what's the guy's name? It's right there. You had
Danny
it.
Hakim.
Danny Hakim. We'll see if Mr. Hakim.
5 a.m. he's writing this.
Yeah. Well, he got an email from me at an hour ago, an hour and a half ago. How are you able to get the story?
I was just paying for the New York Times.
You're really a
Disgusting
demigod.
as that is. So it's a good opportunity to ask our audience to sponsor Crowdsource the Truth, because all this stuff costs money. People can do that by following me on X at JG_CSTT or on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, subscribestar.com, or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We're going to have a whole Superb Owl sponsor exclusive segment right after this. So it's a great time for people to subscribe, Charles.
Good pitch. And you're absolutely right. Now, one thing here, the Clinton Global Initiative to me, and people have likened my work to Harry Markopolos, reminds me a lot of what Madoff did. Madoff knew how to pull the strings of thousands of rich and, in theory, cynical people. How do you do that? The Clinton Global Initiative is the same approach. You make the opportunity an invitation-only thing. Jason, I might be able to get you into this Madoff fund, but he's very picky about his investors, and if you start asking questions, you're definitely not going to have the great opportunity that I've had.
Right.
So, I've been made on paper. I turned $1 million into $25 million. according to the slips of paper. And I've never tried to get my money back, but and similarly with the Clinton Global Initiative, the heady days of 2000 forward, I remember them well. George W. Bush may have won the national election in the United States, but we are moving into a new millennium, into a new era of global governance, and New York will be the global finance capital of the universe. And we're going to have these global organizations like the Clinton Foundation, which will be around till the end of time. If you want to get on this freight train and mingle with the global elite at the Clinton Global Initiative, right around the time of the UN General Assembly, where you can be one of a limited number of people to mix with heads of state and billionaires and other famous and rich people from around the world, I might be able to get you a ticket for $20,000. And you think about that, if you're somebody who's been around, to pay it costs $20,000 to go to Australia first class from New York, or maybe more, just to go there. I mean, to only have to pay $20,000 to be able to hobnob for 3 days with Bill Clinton and all these other famous people. That's an opportunity that most every major news organization was desperate to get their reporters into that thing, to get a chance to interview St. Bill and St. Hillary, and even Laura Bush went to it. So this thing on its face, it was just like the Madoff Fund, and none of these people bothered to check, including this reporter, whether or not there ever was a legal entity called the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation or the William J. Clinton Foundation that registered in New York. Because there was one in 1998, and it did, according to the 990, have $3 million in revenue in 1998. So it should have filed a report in New York, but it didn't. And it never filed a report until either 6 or 7 with the New York Attorney General. It certainly never filed to have the Clinton Global Initiative fictitious name used by 2005 or 6 or 7. In 8, they did file, but in 9 they filed, but they incorporated in Arkansas. That is to say, somebody signed articles of incorporation and filed them in Arkansas, but they didn't sign bylaws until 2010. And Barack Obama, Saint Barack, showed up at the Clinton Global Initiative in 2009 and 2010. I think every year through 2016 he was there. So, the various and sundry people who were foolish enough, Rupert Murdoch gave $1 million, Barbara Streisand in theory gave $1 million, to the Clinton Global Initiative, the various and sundry numbskulls who, thought it was a good idea to attend this meeting and who funded it, including a guy called Tom Golisano, who was the founder of Paychex. He has a book where he talks about visiting Bill Clinton in 2005 in the spring and agreeing to underwrite the cost of the Clinton Global Initiative. How much diligence did he do? There was no such thing. And how much money was actually spent in connection with this thing, raised for this thing? What were the charitable, good works supposedly of this grift fest? And most importantly, how much money was made in projects that were concocted initially at this grift fest? You meet the head of state, you meet a big CEO because you're at the Clinton Global Initiative, and then you get hired as a financial advisor, you're at Teneo, or you get a legal contract, or you concoct some investment scheme out of all this. I mean, in the list of supposed commitments to action, one is more stupid than the next. I mean, there's one, I think, that the International Toilet Foundation, brags about one of its commitments to action, or the Toilet Foundation. I mean, there's some set of morons, frankly, announced that their commitment of action is to create $1 billion investment fund. That's not charitable. And just one, in IRS regulations, which I guess they don't enforce if you're a Democrat and you commit crime, they are crystal clear that a charity must not, through its operation, lead to the creation of, quote, more than insubstantial private gain. That amount in financial terms, and it's not just measured in financial terms, has been held to be in the low hundreds of dollars. So
I think this is the toilet initiative here. Yeah.
Is it really?
World Toilet Day, members. That's a great idea.
It's celebrated.
Hillary on the toilet.
It's celebrated, though, without a toilet on the streets of New York every day.
Oh, my God.
So you go through the list. If you were to say, all right, this is, do a thought experiment and take all of the press releases concerning the Clinton Global Initiative and all of their recited commitments to action, and then send a package out that, unbeknownst to all, Donald Trump's foundation had the Trump Global Initiative, and send out these supposed accomplishments to all the major news hounds, you would have, I hate this word, a plethora of stories castigating the Trumps for these supposed accomplishments that the Clintons have trumpeted since 2005. I mean, the scale of their bragging, of their accomplishments, boastful doesn't capture the true meaning of their claims. I mean, they're preposterous on their face. An entity that doesn't exist has secured tens, maybe $100 billion of contributions for causes that never have been audited any place on earth. No one has ever thought about, how many directorships and business deals has Chelsea Clinton derived through the Clinton Global Initiative.
So you don't think International Toilet Day is legitimate?
Not a fan.
Go out on a limb.
Actually, I don't give a shit about that.
Now, so Charles, basically we have this Clinton, allegedly, ostensibly, hopefully, the Clintons are going to testify. Like, that's the whole reason why I made this superb owl image. I don't know if people can tell very easily, but it's James Comer inside here getting ready to sack 42, Bill Clinton. And I don't know. Have they decided? So you were talking to me, not to redirect, but you were talking to me offline about how now there's some kerfuffle on X where Bill Clinton is like, oh, you got to have it in public, and that this is perhaps an effort to get it into the Stacey Plaskett kind of yelling at everybody mode.
Yeah, no, Comer is very smart, and he's made a lot of progress against great odds. Comer understands. In Bill and Hillary, well, in Bill, for example, certainly, we have somebody who was disbarred for lying in a deposition, right? And it was significant that he lied in a deposition in the midst of a controversy. When there was an important deposition. What he lied about, may have tipped the balance in the ultimate decision. Maybe he wasn't punished hard enough. And Susan Weber Wright's decision is very interesting because it explains really. I think it must have been a painful thing. She was a student of Bill Clinton's at University of Arkansas Law, and here she has to write a decision where she talks about his contumacious conduct and doesn't get into all the specifics of what the two of them were doing, chasing each other around the Oval Office, the Oral Office. But what she does highlight is that it's bad when an ordinary mortal lies under oath. That's bad. But when the chief legal officer, which is what Bill is as president and what Donald Trump is actually, when the chief legal officer of the United States is forced into is part of a controversy, he tries like hell, and he succeeds using Bob Bennett in pushing the day of reckoning past the 96 election. A fair question for people who like to think about alternate history is what would have happened had all this information come to light before the 96 election? Would he have won re-election in 1996? He hires Skadden Arps and Bob Bennett. They push it out to 97. The Supreme Court thinks so much of Bob Bennett's reasoning that a president shouldn't be sued, even in a private matter that occurred before he became president, until after he finishes the presidency. Bennett writes in his book, which I was just reviewing, that he fully expected to win and that he was humiliated by the decision, which was 9-0 against Bennett and Clinton. So a fair question to ask for these people is, when you lose something 9-0 that you've delayed for years, and you've been using lawyers that you didn't have the money to pay for, right? Is the delay the kind of behavior that should also be sanctioned? You should have known you were going to lose. You did this for purely political reasons, and then you lied under oath in 1998, and then you were sanctioned for it and you were disbarred. And now in 2026, you've got your spin doctors up there, and what you're trying to say is, listen, we're perfectly willing to go before Congress and tell you what happened. That is not what they're saying. They're saying that we know that we could organize the idiots, mostly Democrats, but there's some idiots on the Republican side, to allow a format in the Oversight Committee where Republicans get 5 minutes and then Democrats get 5 minutes. And when you do that, there's no way to get head of steam up on questioning, because when the Republicans ask the question, you can be sure that that moron from the Virgin Islands, Pleskett, or some other person is going to object, interrupt, talk over the Republican, and eat into the 5 minutes. You can be sure of that. Then when it comes to the Democrat turn, the Republicans are not going to do that. And the Democrats are going to just shift the ball game entirely. Ask softball questions. In the case of Bill, Mr. Clinton, Mr. President, how much time in your long career, how many years have you been active in life? 60. How many of those years were you in the private sector? None. For how long have you devoted yourself to the public service? Well, I was governor, or this or that. All right. And after you left the presidency, have you exclusively spent your time saving humanity? Just all those bullshit questions. And Comer understands this. Comer has said that the deposition transcripts will be made public after the deposition. So there's no issue here of the public not getting to hear Clinton's side of the story, either Clinton's side of the story. They're going to hear it. The only issue is whether the Clintons will succeed in putting enough pressure on Comer to fall for the ruse that that hearings in the committee hearings will make any sense at all. They won't. The Clintons know how to drive through that. That's what she did with Benghazi. That's what Bill did in other cases. And in a deposition, however, you can. I've been through depositions, tough ones, and you can you can force somebody to sit there for hours, and you can ask pointed follow-up questions. You can force a witness to refresh his or her recollection by showing them evidence that they claim they don't remember. There are all sorts of ways to really get to the truth. And in a deposition, if I were given the opportunity to ask questions in a deposition, they would be begging for mercy within within 360 seconds. They would be begging. Yeah. And I'm not a lawyer. I can imagine a real lawyer, could go in there and devastate these people.
Yeah.
Because you lead them right into perjury traps.
And, their new favorite thing to say in Congress, Charles, whenever it goes over to the Democrats is, why are we talking about fill in the blank when we should be talking about January 6th and how crappy Donald Trump is and all of that? But we do need to put a pin in it for a moment, Charles, because we're going to make our way over to the First Amendment Forum where we're going to continue this conversation. I hope that people who aren't watching Bad Bunny or whatever is on the Superb Owl right now are going to join us on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or on subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. People can also follow me on X at JG_CSTT. I take it from the laughter you don't like watching rap singers in footsie pajamas, so we'll leave the Bad Bunny material for another day. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.